So Solr is nothing but an open source web application built on top of Lucene API libraries, as simple as that. So whatever the features Lucene offers, Solr provides the same set of features. On top of it, it provides a lot of other tools and extends and overrides some of its features as well. Okay, that's the second benefit of Solr instead of using direct Lucene. So the third benefit is sometimes using the core Java APIs will be really challenging because you have to have that Java expertise and fine-tuning the Java for performance and all that stuff would be really challenging. You can use the RESTful APIs what Solr provides and use them as a service instead of directly interacting through APIs with the index, which adds a lot of interoperability with different frameworks or platforms. So you can interact using RESTful services either over XML or JSON or CSV or binary format or HTTP. So this is the most preferred interaction between the indexed content and the applications, so that you don't have to build or write Java code using Lucene API libraries. Fine, so just a quick intro about when Solr got introduced sometime in 2004 by Yannick in CNET Networks. So I'm not going to get into the details of it. So when initially Solr was invented and used, it was mostly used as a master-slave architecture, and it was used for limited data sets. So Solr was initially not capable of scaling to huge big data sets. So the new versions of Scalar has been re-architected and redesigned to handle huge big data sets so that you can scale it for any imaginably bigger data sets what you can think of, even in petabytes. That's the biggest enhancements what you could see after 3.0 releases. So apart from that, we'll be covering SolrCloud, which will be adding a lot of performance and scalability and reliability aspects. In the initial versions or stages, the Solr used to have master-slave architecture where you have to use master for all writes, and then you have to use slaves for all reads. So this kind of architecture provided a lot of challenges, and you have to use all your updates or writes in a stagnated approach. So there was no real-time or near real-time read and write kind of a concepts initially with Solr. So those are the earlier versions of Solr. So the new versions with 4.0, which we'll be covering in the course, which is a much more enhanced and superior platform which can offer you all those kind of features. Great. So we'll be seeing just a quick walkthrough of what we have seen Solr so far. So Solr offers you advanced full text search kind of a capability to your applications. So it is web scale platform. You can scale to your web needs dynamically. It can scale elastically with the newer versions. It operates or provides interfaces over HTTP and XML or JSON as a RESTful service, so automatically it provides a lot of interoperability. And also you have got a lot of administrative or configuration management or managing your Solr servers has been done through your administrative web application, which can be handled easily rather than going and working with the configuration files. So there is a lot of monitoring and scalability aspects which has been enhanced or which has been provided as part of the Solr. So Solr gives you the option of building applications, search applications with ease. So you don't have to worry about the scale problem, you don't have to worry about the minute details of the API, changing the API, all that stuff. So you install a Solr server on a Java compatible web container like Tomcat or Jetty or any other web container. Your search engine is ready to go and start working on it. Okay. Fine. So we'll not be covering a lot of details into the architecture, just to give the idea about what the Solr architecture has got. So on the top of the image, you could see the request handlers. So the request handlers is nothing but the incoming request over HTTP or RESTful services is intercepted by a request handler. So there will be a lot of request handlers by default which is configured, and also you can plug in a lot of request handlers to intercept your incoming requests. So admin is a request handler which will handle all the administrative tasks. So select is a request handler, or in simple terms you can think of like a servlet, which is a servlet which intercept different URL contexts. Okay, so spell is a request handler which will handle the spell checking part, kind of a thing. So there are different request handlers. We have provided a glimpse of it so that you can understand what is a request handler. So your input query to retrieve the index can go to any one of the request handler to perform your application needs. Okay, so once the request handler intercept the incoming request, so there will be a lot of search components which can be configured and used by the request handlers. So you can see there will be search components like highlighting. If you wanted to use a highlight feature, if you wanted to use the face setting feature, you can use some of these components, and these components will be handling those core features or the key features. So once the component handles the incoming request, it goes directly into the distributed search where it fetches the records and gives it back. On parallel, you could see there are a lot of config things and also a schema management, and you can also see request writers. So request writers is nothing but it is completely different from request handlers. So request handlers are for reading the documents, request writers are to update the index. So there are different forms of request handlers. So you can use a XML request handler to submit XML content. You can use JSON request writer to process the JSON format of your document, or you can use a database import handler to import the data directly from the database tables and write it to the index. So those are the responsibility of the request writers, or you can even call it as update handlers sometimes. Okay, so request writers and the update handlers, they both together handle all the indexing process. Okay, so some of these things you can also see on your right hand side. There will be a query parser, and all the components can interact through a query parser. So we'll be looking all these things in detail when we get into the course. So some of these things I've just briefly explained. So I just wanted to quickly show you the demo of the admin UI. So the admin UI provides you the complete management of your Solr server, which can be used to configure your configuration files, configure your admin cores, and configure and manage your indexes itself. Indexes is nothing but a database in correlation with the databases terminology. Fine. In a nutshell, if you wanted to just visualize how would your Solr be looking like, so there can be multiple Solr instances running. When I say multiple Solr instances, so you can deploy the web application on multiple servers so that each server runs one instance of it. Okay, so that is what we call it as a Solr instance. So every server or instance can have multiple databases or indexes or cores. I'm interchangeably using databases so that people, those who are coming from databases background, they can feel it comfortable. So otherwise we don't refer them as a database. Most of the time we refer it as core or one index. So one server can have multiple cores or multiple indexes, right? So this could be like HR department index, this could be like a finance department index, and the third one could be something like a IT department index for different applications or for same application as well. Just to create that different categorization, you can also run different indexes or cores on different Solr instances or on the same instance as well. So each core or index can have documents, and each document can have multiple fields, right? So every core or index will have a schema.xml file which will define the structure of the core. Okay, so which is very flexible. You have to define what kind of fields, what kind of field types you're going to use in that index, so that when you are indexing the documents, it will follow that particular structure. Okay, so as I mentioned, a Solr can have multiple cores, or a Solr server can handle multiple cores. So a core is nothing but an index which is handled by the Solr server. Okay, so if you wanted to run a Solr core, you have to have few XML files which you use it for configuring and controlling your Solr instances. So there are only 3 to 4 configuration files which you should be aware of. One is the solr.xml, which will be the configuration file for your entire Solr, and solrconfig and schema.xml. So schema.xml, we have seen, it is to define the structure of the core, right? And solrconfig is to define the architecture of your core or architecture of your instance. Say for example, if I am using a XML request handler, I will define all of those components into solrconfig. If I'm defining what kind of update handler, so all of those things will be handled in those configuration files, which will be covering it in detail in the course. Okay, so again, when I said a Solr server can have multiple cores or databases, so it is not that each core cannot communicate, but most of the time they run in isolation as isolated databases. Okay, so it is not intended for interacting between multiple cores and that kind of features. Rather, okay, so Lakshmi Narayana has a question. Google, Yahoo, Bing also uses index based on search engines. Yes, absolutely. So most of them, more or less, the approach remains the same. So Yahoo is one of the biggest consumers of Lucene and Solr, where it's not for the they use a different platform and techniques, but most of the applications like Yahoo Autos or Yahoo Finance, they all use Solr or Lucene in the backend to index the documents and search those documents. So if you are referring to the Google, Yahoo, Bing search engine, it's much more complicated technique or platform. They might not be using something like Lucene or Solr. So Lucene or Solr is used to build applications around search. Okay, so they are two different things, in fact. Fine, so if you just wanted to get a glimpse of how the documents would look like in Solr, as I mentioned, you can use different request handlers. Say for example, if you are using XML request handler to index your content, so this is how something you can envision or the documents would look like. Since you said you wanted to use a XML request handler, so you have to follow the XML request handler syntax, which will be like doc. Inside that you can have field name and the value of it. Most of the time it will be like a name value pairs. So if you notice, this will be like a document and list of fields. In the field it is a name and value, name and value. Okay. So we have seen that Solr can support multiple request handlers. This is just a quick recap of what can what type of data you can send it to Solr for indexing and searching. So you can send it any type of document, mostly used documents like CSV files, Microsoft Words, PDF, provided that you have configured all those request handlers and search components properly. You can almost use all the metadata type documents or plain text or XML or JSON to index the data into it. Okay, so Solr uses something called Solr Cell framework, in turn which uses the Apache Lucene, just the way how Lucene supports rich text document analyzing and indexing. You can use Solr to handle all that rich document types as well. Okay, so for interacting with Solr, apart from RESTful web services, there are a lot of Solr clients which can used to interact with the RESTful services rather than you building your own APIs to even interact with the web services. You can use the SolrJ clients or Solr Java clients, or there are a lot of other language clients which can be used to interact with the Solr instances as well. Okay, Srini is keen to understand what is the key differences between Solr and Lucene in simple terms. So Lucene is nothing but a set of API libraries which can be used to create indexes and search indexes to get read and write documents. Okay, so if you are building an application, you have to use those libraries and build applications. Solr is nothing but a web application built using those same Lucene libraries, so that you don't have to write code to interact with the index. You can use the web APIs or RESTful services to interact with Solr. In simple terms, that's the difference. Got it, Srini? Okay. So since we have seen the Lucene flow of creating indexes and analyzers, so this should be a straightforward self-explanatory thing. So the analysis part, again, it can have analyzers and tokenizers and list of filters. So all these things can be configured in your configuration file, solrconfig file, which can be defined using the XML file, and your solrconfig file looks something like this. So there are a lot of configuration aspects which we'll be talking in detail when we go to this place, so that you can get what kind of details you can configure it. Okay, just for an example, I have said you can create an update handler, and you can specify what kind of query or the search component you're using. So you can specify all those things here. Okay, so just a quick overview and recap of the Solr search process. When you send a request, it goes to a request handler. So the request handler can be of any type, like select or admin or spell check, based on what you have configured. The request handler sends it to the query parser. So Solr also has its own search expression language extended from Lucene. Using that, you can write expressions to query the documents. So that is handled by the query parser, and the query parser analyzes your syntax. If the syntax, everything is correct, or it follows as per the syntax, then it goes and fetches the document from the index and returns it back. So that's the high level flow or the process which you can come across in Solr. So apart from what we have seen in Lucene, Lucene is the API library which Solr uses. Solr also extends the same features like Lucene. It also provides faceting, highlighting, spell check, query re-ranking, and more features which we would have not come across in Lucene. So more like this, right? So if you are looking for some results or some documents, Solr can recommend you documents more of this sort. You might have seen this thing in a lot of e-commerce applications. Do you want to see more of this records, right? So those kind of features can be supported by Solr. Apart from like auto suggestions, like say for example, if you are trying to type something and you are not very sure what exactly you are looking at, so there will be a drop down which will be coming the moment you type. Say I need say Android phone, so it will type and say, are you looking for Android KitKat phones or something like that. So it will provide a lot of suggestions as well, and also it provides a lot of real-time update and read features, which is very hard to achieve it in the Lucene. So some of these features which we'll be covering in details. Okay. So the configuration files which we'll be covering in detail will be based on the course module. So we'll be covering Solr config, which will be handling the configurations for all the indexing and search components. Solr.xml is at the entire Solr level for the course, how many cores you have, what are the core names, all that details. The core properties is for the defining some properties at the core level, and schema is at the core data structure level where you can define what field type, what field it is, all that aspects. Fine, so let's briefly touch base on SolrCloud since we are just running short of time. So I'll be quickly covering this part and then we can go into the Q&A if you have anything. So as I mentioned, Solr initially used to have master-slave architecture prior to 3.0, which got changed into a distributed architecture which provides a very robust and fault-tolerant platform to support high availability using a feature called SolrCloud. So we'll be covering all these things in detail. And SolrCloud is not a master-slave architecture. It does not have a dedicated or a blocked master. Rather, it will select leaders based on the request dynamically. So some of the features what you can get using SolrCloud with the new versions. SolrCloud is not a feature or a terminology which you can represent that Solr can be used in cloud. So it's not. It is a feature which is being termed as SolrCloud. So Solr, yes, definitely it can be run in cloud, but it does not represent that it is running in cloud. So it is for a different architecture what we run it, what we name it as SolrCloud. So SolrCloud architecture can be used for big data needs, for horizontal web scaling where you have high availability and fault tolerance, where the data is sharded and replicated in multiple shards, which provides high elastic scaling and distributed searching and indexing. So we'll see how all of these things happens when we get into that module in the course. So for now, it is a much more enhanced version compared to the prior ones. Okay, just to give a glimpse of it, initially the Solr used to be a master-slave architecture. The way how Solr can support distributed scale and web scale is through having multiple shards, and the data is duplicated or replicated into multiple shards, and each one of your read or write request is going through zookeepers, which will elect the leaders to suffice the read or write purpose. Okay, so that way you can have high availability with a lot of fault tolerance incorporated into the distributed search architecture. So SolrCloud is nothing but a distributed high available architecture which you can use it for real-time applications. Great. So this is again a very interesting slide. So you can see there is a lot of adaptations and a lot of job trend which just got picked up in the last 4 to 5 years. So this seems to be really interesting. So this is one of the should be one of the strong motivation factors why you should go and learn Solr, so that there is a lot of opportunity going around. So please look around and see if there is a lot of energies which is going on adapting Solr. So I think it's a great Okay, so I just try to be on time. So we have got another minute or so that I could take few questions, couple of them. So Srini has one. So are these Lucene and Solr used only in the big data world? Great question. So I said it's not required that it has to be in a big data world. So Solr can be used for your small search capabilities, but it can handle the big data needs as well. Okay, so even if you have say 10 GB or 10 GB of data which needs to be searched and which needs to be retrieved, you can use Solr, or if you have 10 petabytes of data or documents, you can still use Solr in the SolrCloud architecture model. That's what we call it as. It can suffice the needs of big data as well. So Solr new versions is treated as a big data NoSQL database. Initially it was not supporting that kind of feature where it can handle a lot of records. Okay. Great. So Lakshmi Narayana says, is it suitable for Hadoop developers? Great question, Lakshmi. I would definitely say yes, because there are two different technologies which can work in the big data space. Say for example, if you are a developer trying to build search applications, so it would be definitely useful. So please use your own discretion. I would definitely say yes, as long as you have a lot of aspiration to build applications using these key technologies which are being used across. So I would recommend you guys to go for it. Again, it's my personal opinion, so use your own discretion. So Srini says Java is a must to be a Solr developer. No, Lucene, for us to understand Java basics are required. For Solr, you don't have to be a Java developer. That's the reason Solr is built using the Lucene APIs, and it provides web services interface or RESTful APIs like XML and JSON. So you can use any SolrJ client or Solr client from say PHP or say from .NET or say from Ruby. So you can use any language which you are comfortable with and interact with Solr. So this is purely like a database. It doesn't have any dependency on the language. Great. So I would just go for one more last question if you guys have it. If we don't, I'll just call it off, and I'll just wait for a few more seconds before it can be called off. Great. So thank you guys. Thanks for your time and thanks for attending on the weekend. I appreciate your time. And I got one more question. Where can we find more jobs? Okay, so I think this is a little bit more generic question for Apache Solr. Okay, that's somewhat relevant. So yes, I think so. I would try to see if it can be accessed or shared. Okay, so I think Apache Solr is being used in almost every decent application where it has to have a search feature. So it's not only restricted to say e-commerce applications or say any portals like e-commerce applications. So it is being widely used across enterprise applications like online applications, so social apps. So there is a lot of demand, and what my guess is every search feature which the companies use, they are using either directly Lucene or the Apache Solr or the Elasticsearch kind of a feature, again, which is built on top of Lucene. So there is a lot of opportunities for sure, which I cannot quantify it, but I could say from my experience, because I've seen, at least in my past 4 jobs, all the companies were using Apache Solr. So this is more of a de facto nowadays.